This interview was made by the EVERBLACK podcast. They do so many interviews with so many different types of people. You're bound to see something that you like. So definitely check them out. All of their links, including their YouTube channel and Spotify, will be in the pinned comment and in the description. After asking for permission, they did let me upload this section of the interview when he's talking about God of War Ragnarok. However, this is not the full interview. If you want to check out the full thing, the link will be in the description and in the pinned comment as well. Thank you.
No one's heard Tyr's voice yet, and it's kind of interesting because Tyr is part of God of War Ragnarok, which is coming out this year sometime. They're frantically finishing the game, it's going to be huge, man. It's going to be epic. And yeah, so Tyr is this. What is he? He's 9'6" or something. So yeah, big giant of a man. So that was a lot of fun. That was all mocap on the mocap stage here in Sony's Santa Monica lot. And yeah, man, it's thank you. Yeah, I've been pretty blessed to come over here, and I had a career in Melbourne or in Australia. Did a lot of theater work, then a bit of film and TV, and then sort of came over here to work in film and TV, and predominantly have worked in games, which has just been a blessing, as I said.
How's the mocap stuff though? I mean, how is that, compared to doing it, the traditional way?
I think mocap is it feels to me a lot like theater. It is a lot about your physicality. It is all like one take. So you'll have scenes that run like 10, cut scenes that run, 8 to 10 minutes, and it's all got to be in one take. And there's like, up to 10 people like running around this stage with, clothes that are too tight. So you got to definitely make sure that you're, you got to make sure that you fit, just so you don't look like a big fat slob on the sound stage. They call it a volume, the stage. And then, but then it's also like film, because you have like the film camera in front of you. So you have your mic up, you have the film camera like right here. So you can't do any like kissing scenes or anything, because two people have like this big camera in front of you. So you're always like mashing the cameras and stuff. That's kind of funny. But otherwise, I love it. It's actually, because when I came over here, I did do a bit of film, a bit of TV and film, but I sort of missed theater a lot. And this, to me, reminded me a lot of theater. It's the same kind of connection you have with someone else, with one exception. That is that my character is, 9 foot tall. And so someone would walk around behind me with a big, like my face on a pole. And so everyone else was looking up at my face, and my eye line to everyone else was on their crotch. So that's a hard way to act with someone if you're looking at their crotch the whole time, or an easy way, depending on which way you look at
it. But he's the Norse god of war, right?
Yeah, he's the Norse god of war, and he's like originally kind of Odin is the All-Father, but sort of going back in the lore, in the pantheon, Tyr was kind of the original god of all gods. He's sort of the god of fairness and justice, and but also war. So he's a little bit of an antithesis to Kratos, who's like just an out and out badass. A little more of a measured justice, a measured rage is what Tyr's about. Yeah.
So when it comes to, obviously, the Norse mythology and creating this character, did you have free reign? Did you get to play with the voice and his movements, and did you go back through, Norse mythology and research, and how deep does that go?
Very deep, very deep. So I'd already studied a lot of the mythology, a lot of the Norse mythology, and when I came to this role, when I first came to this role, I actually thought it was for a completely different project. And because they give you these auditions, and they're like, all right, so he's a sergeant at arms, he's a bit of a military commander. We're thinking like Midwest, something like. And so I walk into the room as like Brad Pitt from like Inglourious Bastards, that kind of hard ass kind of dude. Turned out to be completely different to that. But in terms of like building out Tyr, like Matt Sofos, the writer, and Eric Williams, the director of that game, and Corey Barlog as well, the Master in Chief. They already have such a strong idea of what the story is and what the character is, and how that character fits into Kratos's journey and Atreus's journey, and every other sort of character in that universe. And so, because it's I mean, physically, Tyr is very different to everyone else. He's such a big bastard. But then, from a voice point of view, you do want your voice print to be slightly different. And in fact, like when I came to Tyr, I was probably a little too close to Kratos's voice in a sense, and so I made some adjustments early on to find him. And then once he slots in, then you're just going to set every day, and he's kind of there. But in terms of like his backstory, and like obviously Tyr has some pretty famous. Anyone who knows Norse mythology knows that Tyr. One of the famous stories about Tyr is Fenrir, the wolf, had gotten free, and the only way to capture him was to they created this thread made from like cat's tears and like crazy stuff, and the only way they could bind Fenrir was to put him in this thread, and the only way they could get him to stand still was for Tyr to put his hand in Fenrir's mouth and say, look, it's not a trap, I'm just putting my hand in your mouth, and if it's a trap, then you can bite my hand off. And it was a trap, so Fenrir bit his hand off. So Tyr, and then so there's a lot of lore that does fit into this game. But then Santa Monica Studios, they depart from that whenever they want, still keeping with the story they're building. And so Tyr has a different journey again to what's sort of famous in lore. A lot of fun though, a lot of fun to find him.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously being that big of a character, do you sort of naturally go for that big deep voice? And I mean, is that where you sort of start?
That's probably, that's where I start. Definitely where I start. It's not where I ended up. And in fact, like a lot of I think his nature and not to give too much away, but where we find Tyr, when we first find Tyr, he's been through some stuff. And so, what does that do to a god who's been through a lot and is literally just trying to find his feet? Like, what is, where it's a broken kind of situation, and we find him in, and where's he going to go from there? So that's naturally where you start. But then from the physicality point of view, you get the suit on. I'm 6 foot, so I'm not a short man by any stretch. But when you get into the volume and you start to when you're standing on the stage and you look up at the monitors around the stage and you actually see your character in relation to the other characters, and he's like 4 foot taller than the lead character. And then you go to walk around, and everyone does this as soon as they get into mocap, is the first thing you want to do is just do all kind of crazy moves. So, I'm dancing around, I'm like flossing, I'm like kicking a football. I'm like, what does it look like to bowl a fast ball? It's pretty funny. The Americans are sitting around going, what the hell is this dude doing? What is that game? Like, it's Aussie rules. It's pretty funny to do all that sort of stuff. But then, the animation directors in there, they're like, look, when you're walking, he's so tall that, how do I put this? His legs are too close together. And so one of the kind of key things you got to do is put a big old pair of balls between his legs and sort of open stance up and try and the way you walk is very dictated by his anatomy that you don't necessarily possess, if that makes sense.
That's super interesting. I didn't know it worked that way.
Yeah. And that happens in every job I've ever done. There's always been a little key into the character. And, for Tyr, he's the god of justice. So, the way he held his hands was key for me. And what he did with how he walked with his thighs was kind of, and you would see it, you could see it straight away. As soon as you made that little adjustment to the way you walked as Ben, you could see Tyr looked a lot more like menacing and kind of where he needed to be.
That's awesome. I mean, the game, though, I mean, you were saying before, it was delayed because Christopher Judge, who voices Kratos, he had some health issues. How did, obviously his fellow actors and the team support him through that,
Well, Chris, he's he's legend. Like,
man.
He's a big guy as well. Like, I remember walking on the set. I think he stands 6'2", and we're doing the scene, which is the scene from the trailer where he picks me up and puts me on the wall, and then Tyr stands up and he's like 4 foot taller. But Chris picks me up the way we do it with the stunt work and puts me against the wall, and then I'm supposed to stand up another 4 feet, but I'm literally standing up on a box, and I'm only like this tall above him. But he had just it was hip surgery or something.
Yeah.
There was two things. There was that, and then there was also the pandemic comes in, and we're like, all right, how do we shoot? When it was pretty strict over here in terms of the union over here and how you could work on stages, and Sony was super careful about everyone, and thankfully no one really got sick. But half of it was that. But he came on set and he had just had a hip operation. I didn't even find out until like later, but he was still like going at it.
Wow.
So, the man's made of stone. I love Chris Judge. Like, he's a good friend of mine now. And yeah, I would do anything for him. Like, but then, we'd be doing scenes where we're literally running around and like jumping on the ground and like sprinting off. And at first he was a little ginger, doing these scenes.
Yeah, understandable.
But then after our break and we came back, and the dude, I think he just like put on another like 20 pounds of muscle. And I walked in, was like, I think it was Christmas time. So I was like, dude, you look stacked, you just look like like a linebacker in NFL. It's just like a monster. And I was like, I'd been working out. I was like, I thought I looked good at the time. And he walks in, I'm just like, all right, there's the real God of War,